So way back in part 3 of Secrets of the New York City Subway, I mentioned an old railway covering a section about the Polo Grounds shuttle. This old section was part of the Putnam Division. It was once part of the New York Central Railroad that ran all the way up to Putnam County. Today, I'm going to talk about it. On May 21st, 1869, the New York and Boston Railroad proposed to build a railroad line along the Harlem River and into Brewster. This could give connections to the New York and Harlem Railroad where trains could go on to Albany or Boston. In 1872, the company was reorganized into the New York, Boston, and Northern Railway as a combination of the original name and two other railroads, the Putnam and Dutchess Railroad and the Dutchess and Columbia Railroad. In 1873, the company was renamed yet again, this time into the New York, Boston, and Montreal Railway, which was planned to continue up into Chatham in Columbia County. However, the Panic of 1873, which was a financial crisis that struck Europe and North America, caused these proposals to be put on hold. During the crisis, the Dutchess and Columbia Railroad was absorbed into the Central New England Railway and once again to the New York, Boston, and Montreal Railway, and once again the New York, Boston, and Montreal Railway was reorganized into the New York, Westchester, and Putnam Railway in 1877. After being leased to the New York City and Northern Railroad in 1878, the railroad finally opened from High Bridge to Brewster in April of 1881, nearly 12 years after it was proposed by the New York and Boston Railroad. But a year earlier, the company was leased to the West Side and Yonkers Railway, the predecessor to the 9th Avenue line of the Interborough Rapid Transit. That company will be important in a bit. Anyways, this lease allowed the New York City and Northern Railroad to run across the Putnam River across the Putnam Bridge, where it would then terminate in Manhattan at 155th Street Station. That will also be important in just a moment. In 1910, the IRT purchased the right-of-way across the Putnam Bridge to extend its trains into the Bronx. This included taking over 155th Street Station for the New York City and Northern, which now had to terminate in the Bronx once again, but this time at Sedgwick Avenue Station. Speaking of Sedgwick Avenue, the 9th Avenue line also had its own station of the same name directly on top of the aforementioned one. If you want to know more about the line, then consider checking out part 3 of Secrets of the New York City Subway. Now, I mentioned a lot of renaming in this video. Okay, how about a few more? In 1877, the company was reorganized into the New York and Northern Railway, and by 1894, it became the New York and Putnam Railway under the control of J.P. Morgan. He then leased the railway to the New York Central and Hudson River Railroad. In 1913, it went under the control of the New York and Central Railroad, who categorized the line as the Putnam Division. Now I would like to mention a few facts that I found about this division. Even though it did serve the Bronx, it still lacked a direct connection to the Grand Central Terminal. In 1929, John D. Rockefeller actually had track removed to make way for his property. Also, the first diesel locomotive passenger train in the United States actually ran on the Putnam Division on March 18, 1929. Now, during the 20th century, the city of New York saw the Put as quite insignificant, and so over the decades, branches started to become more abandoned. By 1977, service was cut back all the way to Chauncey Station. In 1989, the last train ran on the Putnam Division, where it was then subsequently abandoned all the way to Marble Hill, just before the junction with the Metro-North's Hudson Line. So today, I'm starting off near Sedgwick Avenue, where the Putnam Division station was located. Now, like I said before, it did originally terminate in Manhattan at 155th Street, and to get there from the Bronx, it ran over the Putnam Bridge. However, neither the bridge nor 155th Street station exists anymore. But getting back to Sedgwick Avenue Station, the best way to see the general area of where it was is on this footbridge that traverses over the Major Deegan Expressway. What you are looking at right now is actually where the IRT platforms were located. The platforms for the Put are a bit further down. Now looking at Google Earth, they would have been right around here. The railway would then continue along the current right-of-way of the Hudson Line, but it's not long until it would come across High Bridge Station, where the facility of the same name is now located. As you can see from this aerial view, nothing at all is there at the station. Two stations on the Hudson Line, Morris Heights and University Heights, were stations of the Putnam Division, although their present form is not actually how it was back then. For example, University Heights Station was actually located slightly south, and what happened was that there was yet another station north of it called Fordham Heights. During the early 1900s, the two stations merged. Now about a half-mile later, and you eventually get to a point where the Hudson Line curves north, but as you can see, the old right-of-way of the Putnam Division is still visible. In fact, as you're heading southbound on the Major Deegan Expressway, look right where, oddly enough, it looks as if there was space for another right-of-way to go under the streets. So even though the tracks are long gone, there are still traces along the way. Eventually, when you get to Van Cortlandt Park South, you are now at the south entrance of the park itself. Here, you can walk along the path of the Putnam Greenway, which is where the alignment of the railway would have been. Already, you can start to see remnants with one of the tunnel underpasses still visible as the right-of-way runs through a trench. Then, if you walk just a bit further, you can turn right and walk under one of the Put's old railroad bridges. Additionally, you can see the year that this bridge was constructed, which was in 1904. And it's a short walk down the path until you make it to Van Cortlandt Park Station. Now this is my favorite part of the journey, because you can still see the old rusty canopies of the station platform as the path continues to another amazing part of the trail. At first glance, this bridge that crosses Van Cortlandt Lake looks like an ordinary bridge, but if you look closely at the side barriers, they actually resemble a railroad bridge, because yes, this is where our railway once ran. But anyways, time to carry on. As you are walking along the John Kieran Trail, which takes you through the heart of Van Cortlandt Park, something unusual comes up to the left, that is, if you have a watchful eye. To the side of the path, you can see 13 pillars. Strange, isn't it? Well, they were actually part of a test to find out which material that would be used to construct the Grand Central Terminal. They were put here way back in 1910, and the New York Central Railroad ended up choosing Indiana limestone, which was known for being durable and cheap to transport. Now for this next part, we're going to have to look at Google Earth again. You can see here where the main line of the Put continues north, but also, you can kind of see another path that curves left. If you keep following it out of the park itself, then you will start to see a more discernible right-of-way. This is a remnant of the Getty Square branch, which is the first branch line to diverge from the Putnam Division as you head north. Most of the Getty Square branch that you can still see is on an embankment, with the exception of this bridge that once carried the tracks, now turned into a pedestrian walkway. But it's the parking lot along Carroll Avenue in which you can look down to where Carroll Station once stood. Additionally, at the intersection of Lawrence Street and Western Avenue, you can still see the old abutment that would have carried the track over the street. Anyways, getting back to Van Cortlandt Park, there are more remnants of the railroad as you walk down the trail. To the side, I noticed a lot of railroad ties. Seriously, there were so many of them. Also, I found a few electrical poles that once carried wires for the railroad. You can follow the main line up to Tibbetts Park. Now keep in mind, the right-of-way is still a footpath. And then, at Yonkers Avenue and on the Cross-County Park Expressway, a railroad bridge can still be seen crossing both roads. As for the path itself, it just keeps going and going and going. At this point, I decided to end my journey, as I would be out all day if I tried going all the way up to Brewster. But don't worry, because on Google Earth, you can still see the right-of-way for the entire length of the Putnam Division. And also, along the way, old structures and buildings still stand, which were once original station buildings of the now abandoned stations. However, when you get to Brewster Station, which is still an active station on the Harlem line of the Metro North, the building is not the original one. This one opened when the station was rebuilt in 1931. Oh, and one more thing. If you're wondering how the Putnam Division meets up with the Harlem line in the first place, you can look south of Brewster and see an empty path curving away. Okay, so that wraps up my video on this particular railroad. I honestly didn't expect it to go on for this long, and even when I wrote the script, I was shocked at how much there was of the Put. So, if you did enjoy this, then consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. My next video should be out in the next 2 weeks. I'll see you then.